Everybody knows that I love Memphis. I've connected to this city, have been my entire life, and had the blessing to be involved in local media for 25 years. Worked at 3 of the 4 local stations over that time. And you meet a variety of people, some of which are, they kind of fly by the side and your ship's passing during the day. They go somewhere else quickly. And some are such characters that they leave an indelible print on your brain like a tattoo. And guess what? We're going to tattoo you today because I've got him right here with us. All right, that's my opening for what's going to be a very fun show. Welcome to the Current Temp. I am Joey Sulipeck. Before I introduce this man, let me say thank you to Lexus of Memphis for making this all possible. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of the product and the people, and they're both stellar. So if you get a chance, go out there and say hi to them. Tell them you saw right here that we were talking about them. Now, speaking of talking about, it's Earle Farrell. Yeah, you know that name. I got the guy right here, entrepreneur, vagabond, rogue. I just asked Earle a moment ago, how in the world do I introduce you? And I cannot come up with enough names. Right now, also a podcaster, kind enough to come sit on the show, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of cool stuff today. His show is called the Earle Farrell 4 Memphis Show. What ways can they find that?
It's on Facebook. We do it live.
Yeah.
And then we put it on YouTube and Spotify after that.
And where are you going live from?
Lansky's at the Peabody.
Historic Lansky's.
Coolest place I could think of. For 2 years, I did my podcast from my home because nobody was coming to a radio station anyplace else. And so I did it. I was telling your wife, I did it on the bar at my home, so I felt very at home.
Very comfortable.
But we figured it out just like you have. You have to have some people that have some expertise, but really each setup is a totally different animal.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are a jillion products that they're using. Rode, which is what I use, and Rode mics, Rode switcher, fantastic products. And what you're doing now, what I do from Lansky's, is basically a TV show without millions and millions of dollars it would have taken to do it at a TV station.
Yeah, let's jump into that. So I'm wearing my Memphis Chicks jersey today, the Chickasaw Indians. If you're not familiar with the Chicks, one of the classic Memphis teams that was here forever. Saw Bo Jackson play with them back when I was a photographer.
I did too, yeah.
So Earle and I have a deep Memphis history. He's been here even though he's out of Texas, he's got a lot of roots here in Memphis. I've done a lot of television. Real quickly, how long were you in TV?
I came here after, 6 years of the business. I moved here from Dallas. I went to work at Channel 3 and was there about 10 years. And then I got out and opened a couple of restaurants.
Yeah.
Life wasn't cruel enough.
Overton Square, yeah.
I did Sleep Out Louie's downtown on Union.
Did you know I bartended there?
No.
I was a bartender at Sleep Out Louie's.
Wow.
How have we never had that conversation?
I don't know, but I guess it was after I left because I ran it for 2 years.
Huh.
And then I went to work for the Orpheum, Pat Halloran, as Director of Development. And then I went to work for Walker & Associates as Vice President of PR. And then Ron Clayman ran into me at a luncheon at the Peabody, as a matter of fact. And we were standing in line. I was making fun of the food. And he goes, you're really pretty funny. I said, not if you're the cook. And so he hired me to go do the morning show there because Dick Hawley had been there for 40 years and had like 9 weeks of vacation.
Magic land for you old Memphis memories?
Well, that was Dick. He was the weather guy, Dick Hawley.
Oh, did I get?
Dick Hawley was the real
he
big
was news
6'5" and did the.
Who did
morning,
Magic Land? Because I was on that show as a kid.
And he did a Friday night monster show too.
Okay,
he did
I don't want to hang us up. When did you go back into television?
I worked at Channel 5 for a number of years until we started doing what I call "See If You Believe This Story." And I said, this is not how I was taught to do this.
By the way, viewers, don't let the kids watch this one. I don't know where it's going. I have no idea.
Well, it'll be honest.
Yeah, it will be true. Very authentic.
I remember going on Chopper 5. I'd gone up and shot something, flooding in Dyersburg, which is not uncommon at all. And I was supposed to come back and do a Sony sandwich at noon from the helicopter over Dyersburg. Fog moved in. We couldn't fly up there. So a producer who I think was at Dottie's Shoes before becoming a producer at Channel 5 said, well, just hover over DeWitt Spain Airport and tell them that you're in Dyersburg. And I said,
that's not true, but
you know I have a real problem with that. He goes, what? He said, you were there. And I said, I'll be glad to say I was there. But I'm not going to say I am someplace and I'm not there.
How about a little ethical integrity, which takes me right to maybe our first question. Do you think there's been an erosion in trust when it comes to media?
Absolutely. At first, it seemed like it was the national media, but it has eroded all the way down to local media. I mean, I talk to people every single day when I tell them about what I'm doing, and they say, so you don't talk about any of the stuff they talk about in the news? I said, no, I talk about things that are great about Memphis, and there are tons of great things about Memphis.
Right.
But they don't concentrate on that. And I'm sure it's the consultants. They say, this is what people really want to hear. But I think we know what people want to hear, and things that concern us, that are in our neighborhoods, and who's doing something that is trying to make things better, and how can we help?
You and I have had this conversation. I think there is a thirst for authenticity, which I think you do extremely well. You are who you are. And interestingly enough, if you're not familiar with podcasts, you're watching one now, but the world has shifted to that. And this new move to get it on a more localized level, right?
It's all about local.
Yeah.
That's what they say about politics, and it's true. All politics are local. And then, of course, there's the national. And the same thing with broadcasting. You know, it was radio. Then television came along, and it was television. And that's what made everybody tune in every night, because it was things happening in their community affecting them. But then when you start just kind of slanting it, and that's what it has become. There's somebody in the newsroom who said, this is why we're going to do this story. They actually told me that at 5, this is how we're going to cover this.
Oh, they told you how to do it?
Well, they said, this is how you go out there, but this is how we see this going. In fact, we've already done the promo.
Wow. Let that sink in. You know, I was sitting here thinking about the question, how did we get this erosion in trust? And I really think part of the problem as well, Earle, is with corporations taking over TV stations, gobbling,
Yep.
cutting the dollar so they can turn a profit because they have to answer to their shareholders, you end up very quickly with less people, less qualified people, because you're hiring younger and less experienced.
For less money.
For less money. And in a community like Memphis, or really anywhere, you want to get to know the person, whoever is delivering the news or weather or whatever. You want to have a relationship with them or feel like it. Can I trust them? Mm-hmm. Do I know them, and can I trust them? And we are hesitant to give that trust. It takes time to earn it. And I think that's part of the problem. It's not the only problem, but part of the problem is there's such a rapid turnover. How do you develop a relationship with someone on a local news station when they're here and gone and here and gone?
Well, and that's very true. It took me several years after I moved here from Dallas at Channel 3 for the police to trust us, because Channel 3 did a big expose on the cops hanging out at donut shops.
That probably didn't help with the relationship.
If you worked at 3, they did not talk to you.
Yeah.
And I asked them, I said, you got a problem with 3? And they told me what happened. And I said, well, you can trust me. You tell me this is background, but I can't use it, I will never use it.
Right.
You tell me I can use this, but only up to here, that's exactly what I'll do. And I think they fed me stuff just to see if I would release it. I never did. You can never compromise your trust, not in the viewers, not in the sources you have, not with the police. And after a while, people say, you know, you're a straight up guy.
What do you think about the decline of what is called appointment viewing? You know, back in the day, the family gathered around to watch Cronkite or whoever. You set a time, I'm going to sit and watch the news and get informed. The advent of social media has meant we can get that on demand whenever. You can stream this podcast whenever you like, but that changes our culture.
It did. I mean, before we didn't even have VHS or any way to know DVRs.
You had to catch it live.
You caught it live, or you just missed it.
Right.
But you're right. Today they can get it anywhere. They don't have to tune into a TV station to get it. They can get it from you.
Yeah.
I mean, weather's coming in, which it is. You put up stuff about what's going on. People trust you. Gosh, the weather personnel. I just saw another new guy on Channel 3 this evening. I liked him. He looked like a regular, normal person.
Yeah.
But they have hired people now right out of college. It's no longer move up the ranks from a small market to medium to larger, and And they're doing the same thing in Nashville. And
Right.
from what I gather, in Dallas and places, you've got a bunch of 26-year-old kids, which are great. We were all 26 at one time. But we learned the craft in small markets. You made all the really dumb mistakes in a small market, because once you get the big market, you make a dumb mistake, and it's magnified tremendously. And
not only that, because we would have those people come through our stations, and I say this with all empathy, but if they're young, they've got no life experience.
they just don't know.
And they're holding the microphone as the authority, but they really don't know. And I would hear them opine or have positions about school districts or families when they were just out of school and had no idea. And I've watched those same people who took a very broad stance at one end of the spectrum. As they age, these are people I've known over the years, and they got out of TV news. They're completely different opinions now because they got married, had kids. So we've got young people coming in. They all want to change the world. They're all Yosemite saying, I'm going to change the world.
Yeah.
But you're not getting objective reporting. One of the things I liked about you and Les Smith, who just passed, when you reported, I didn't know what your opinion was. You were objective, just like Les was.
It wasn't part of the story.
Right.
And that's how we learned to do it. You presented both sides, that they would both talk to you. If they wouldn't talk to you, you'd sit there and say, well, give me a statement, give me something to help present your side. And sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. But I never said, well, this is right or this is wrong. In fact, the people I worked with, I didn't know what their politics were.
Yeah.
It just wasn't discussed in the newsroom.
Now, one of the things I really bang the drum about, Earle, and it makes me bananas, is that we have, with social media, entered this new phase. I call it lazy, where articles are written, okay, everybody's streaming through their news feeds, and the source that is quoted are comments people have made on social media. They will build an entire article around.
People are saying.
You got to watch for these words: internet explodes or outrage. They've gone and cherry picked a few comments out of millions, put them in their print story, and that's their source. To me, that is the most lazy, irresponsible, because it's so manipulative.
When I was the spokesperson for the sheriff, these reporters would call me up and say, how many people work for the sheriff's department? And I said, you got a pencil? I said, yeah, I do. I said, type this in, Google. And they go, oh, real funny, Google. I said, yeah, you have the entire world at your fingertips with your cell phone. It's there. All you have to do is go look it up. I'm here to answer questions you can't find after you go to look it up. I used to spend an inordinate amount of time at the main library back when it was on Peabody.
Yeah.
And in the Memphis room. And I researched everything. And he went back and found old press scimitar photographs that built into the story. Because history is very, very important to everything. How did we get here is where we were. And like I heard a guy today talking about Veterans Day, a reporter, and he said this guy was in World War II. He said he's in 3 wars, World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam. And I said, well, you got them out of order. Korea came before Vietnam, and I don't know whether they just didn't look it up or maybe it was just a misquote. But being able to quote things accurately and historically that's where the trust comes in. Yeah,
and we've become very much a copy and paste news cycle where all it takes is one entity to paste or to print it or post it, and all these other news organizations grab it, copy, paste, run it. Like they've done some research.
And if they're wrong, they don't even do a retraction. They may say something that said in the last newscast, we made an error, we said it was 84, it's really 85, and they move on. And in a lot of cases that covers it, but it's like the newspaper, they do a retraction. I don't know anybody that takes the paper anymore because it's a day late getting into Memphis.
Yeah.
So it's not even really news. And they'll bury it somewhere on the front page or the inside page at the lower bottom.
They don't really want you to see
that. I don't want you to pay any attention to it at all because that would be admit that they were wrong. Everybody's wrong about something. I think you as soon as you find out, you get up and say, hey, I made a mistake. Here's what we said. This is what we should have said.
All right, let me ask you this. You and I both spent many years in the chaos of a newsroom. What is something that you miss about it? What is something you miss about TV news?
Absolutely the people and the
Not all of them.
Well, I'm always trying to be very positive. I would even try to find something good about some of the people I really didn't like. I tried to work with everybody. And I could usually, get them over and kind of friendlier to me. But some people just didn't like me, which I've never understood. How could that happen?
It was hard. I'll be honest. This is not being nice. It was hard to not like you because, you tried to get along with everybody, which was always the rarity in TV news because there's so many polarizing personalities. But go ahead. What you missed the people?
Absolutely. Like Brian Teglin, you were talking about him. Brian and I, the day we met, and I think that's the way it is with most people. The day you meet them, you go, I like this person. Right. And we were good friends right up to the day he died. In fact, we used to see each other's story once in a while, and whoever saw each other first, I would go, Brian Teglin!
Loud.
And he would go, well, it must be Mr. Farrell. And, of course, the people in the store had no idea.
Y'all were doing this over Kroger's in the produce section?
Up and down the aisles. Yeah. And he just had such an incredible sense of humor, very innovative, and was always, just had an incredible personality, as you know, when you worked with him.
Yeah.
But you were the same way. You were much more dapper than we were. Yeah, the bow tie was an incredible thing. And everybody I know thought that was tragic. They made you quit wearing the bow tie. But I told you at the time, they don't want you to be different from anybody else.
They didn't like standing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of that issue, and
that became your brand,
right? And of its own volition, and thankfully, God's blessings. I still wear them all the time. If I go speak, I'm in one, and it's a lot of. We have a lot of conversation. In fact, a kid just recently, I got a picture at Halloween. As my mom sent it to me on Facebook. He dressed up as the weatherman, had on his bow tie, and he had a lanyard that said weatherman. So I mailed him a bow tie. I reached out and said, "Give me this kid's address," and so that was always a good thing. Okay, now I asked you what you missed the most. Let me flip that over. What is something you don't miss about TV news?
What you mentioned is the fact there are so many people that look at you as a threat when you first get there. In fact, I've worked for 7 or 8 TV stations, and the first person to come up and introduce themselves to you is the last person you really get close to. Because
one that wants to be.
This guy doesn't know me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go up and say hi to him and tell him to count on me. If you want to know anything about this newsroom, you come to me and I'll fill you in. And I went, okay, I've met this guy before.
Yeah.
And this is the last guy you need to retire. The people that are really who they are, just sit back and let it happen. And you slowly kind of get the conversation, and they'll say, hey, that was a good story you did today. Although compliments, I always thought were way too few.
Thank you. There was no positive reinforcement.
And they should have, because, as you know, most people that are in broadcasting, show business, and it is show business, are always worried that they're not coming across the way they should.
Right.
And I would ask people, did they come across? Did you laugh at the right place? And but most people, and I used to say that to a couple of my news directors, you should really compliment more people, because I did, and I think it meant a lot to them.
I did the same thing. Funny you say that.
But that's because you're a genuine person and you don't feel threatened by people.
Well, I remember many times over the years, all those years in TV news, just going, does anybody care? Does management care? Because you hear the negative, and I think that's a human trait, to find the one problem instead of the 99 good things, and wondering why didn't management go, hey, great job. And so I would walk around like you just said you did. I found myself at an early age walking around going, hey, just want to let you know, nice work on that. Because I realized people do better when you are positive.
And positive reinforcement.
Right. And
that you noticed. You don't just say good job. You are specific about what made that story so great.
Well, and tell me if you agree with this or not, but if you spend time on a story, you've researched it, and back in the day, you're dialing with quarters from a payphone, and you're doing interviews. It takes a lot of time and energy. Once you've actually crafted it and your brain is melted and you spend all day and you're literally rushing the tape at the last minute and you get no feedback, it's almost like you go, why did I bother? So sometimes you felt like you were sending those beams into the void.
Well, and then it's just gone.
And that's before social media where you could comment. So you go back to those days, and if you're not getting any positive feedback.
Well, let me tell you how much it does matter. I was at Fresh Market tonight picking up stuff for dinner, and there were these 3 employees sitting outside, and they come walking up. Okay, you used to be on the news. I said, that's right, I used to be somebody. And they all just died laughing. They said, oh, you still somebody? And I said, so did y'all watch, where did you watch me? And they said, oh, Fox 13. We loved everybody on Fox. It's because we had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And especially when I first got there, they had a lot of latitude. And then they held us down more and more. Don't call people knuckleheads and thugs and punks, which really everybody feels that way about them, So what are we supposed to show respect for criminals? And that's exactly what they said. Yeah, you got to show them some respect. I went, well, I got no respect for criminals.
Well, we've definitely entered an age where everybody is looking for a reason to be offended.
Yeah.
And again, I don't go out of my way to want to offend anybody, but sometimes, as we know, and in a case that I dealt with personally, it gets manufactured. You can have manufactured offense that you then have to deal with in the repercussions. And TV people are very easy to attack. In fact, I say this when I do public speaking. There are two people on the planet that are the most mocked. It's lawyers and weathermen. If you want a punchline to a joke, lawyers or weathermen,
I think lawyers way outdistance the weathermen.
You're right, but how many times have you heard, I wish I could get my job wrong and not get fired? That's a great one. All right, let me keep this moving.
Okay.
We have both been in the middle of that chaos with breaking news. Okay, I don't know that a lot of people understand breaking news inside a TV station.
What really is breaking news and what is just...
Correct. What is actually news? And that's a separate question. Walk us through, because I've got these memories in my own head. Try to explain what does it feel like to be in the middle of breaking news? Important breaking news.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. This is when I first got to Memphis at Channel 3, and two Falcon jets collided midair over Memphis, over near Brooks Road. Mm-hmm. They were both in training, and they collided. And we had just gotten our first live truck, which was a big bread truck. It had some golden rods that sent a signal out up on
prongs,
top.
Yeah.
And we scrambled and went to the scene, and it was debris everywhere. We should have never been allowed to get up in this area where all the debris was, because that's a crime scene. I mean, that's an investigation. And but we got there. The truck got stuck. They didn't know what to do. And what I'd learned a long time ago about me is when everybody else is panicking, I become more and more calm. And I say, okay, so everybody settle down and take a deep breath. Here's what we're going to do. Steve Lacey, you get the signal up. We're going to go out and see what we can get as far as information about what has happened. Then we're going to come back and do our live shots from here, because there is nothing big to stand in front of. It's all gone. And so everybody said, okay, because somebody was telling everybody what to do. What usually happens is when breaking news happens, the news director's not around, you're at a scene someplace and this is happening, somebody has to say, this is the priority we need.
You got to make the call.
Yeah, and somebody has to do it. And some people are good at it and some people are just not. And there have been news directors I've worked for that were just super at it.
Yeah.
They were like a general in a battle. And other people would sit there and go, well, just go, everybody go, everybody go. Well, that's not what you need. There's the hospital, there's all these other things that are pretty much standard operation. Later on, they came up with a thing called a crash book, and it had every eventuality, and this is what you do. But nobody ever read it, so, it's still back to square one. But now everything is breaking news, so, and people know it. They sit there and go, yeah, I'll be the judge if this is breaking news or not. Because most of the time it's just something happened, but,
I will tell you that if I were to share what I think, one of the things I miss is in the middle of breaking news that was important, whether it was a weather event or news, if you had good chemistry with the people that happened to be there, if you had good leadership, somebody in the booth who was giving you good prompts, hey, you're getting in your earpiece, we've got live video of the tornado, let's go. If it was well executed and everybody was hitting their stride, man, it was electric, because you felt like all the pieces have come together on this engine and we're hitting the gas, and it's a Hemi, and we are going down the interstate providing good information, hopefully making a difference, if it's a life-threatening situation like weather, or if it was a train derailment where you're trying to give people information. In that moment, you lost track of time and space, and it was like you were so plugged into that live wire because you felt like you were making a difference and you were helping.
Well, it's almost instinctual.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying things, but you learn. I have this built-in filter, I'm sure you do too, that I'm saying things. I'm not saying this did happen. I'm saying we are hearing reports of this. We're checking that out, and we will find out if that is true or not. In the meantime, we're looking into this, and this. And so you're constantly updating people.
Progressing the story.
You're moving it all forward. but you're not making any statements that you really can't back up.
Right.
And I think that's a big difference from what's happening now. But it was a great experience. Back during the police and fire strike, this was back in 79, maybe 80, the fire department was on strike, the police department was on strike, the teachers were on strike, everybody. That's when they called in the National Guard. And nobody even mentions that now. Because this is the first time National Guard's ever come to Memphis.
Right.
In fact, Rosanna Dana from Saturday Night Live came to Memphis on her summer vacation and reported on the half tracks parked in front of the fire department on Front Street.
Yeah, really.
And but I remember Paul Barnett, who was a former cop, motorcycle officer. He was up in a helicopter over Billy Hyman's lumber yard over there at Crump and I-240. And it was burning down. They'd said, and a lot of people said the fire department did. I don't know that. But there were a lot of fires, and there was nobody to put them out. And the lumber yard's on fire, and Paul Barnett goes, "It looks like Atlanta going up in flames." And we're going, how does Paul Barnett know what Atlanta looked like going up in flames? That was kind of a couple of years before him.
Yeah.
We figured it out. He's talking about Gone with the Wind. And the movie, but he referenced it.
This reminds me of the Hindenburg.
Yes.
You didn't see the Hindenburg.
It was horrible.
Any outrageous moments stand out to you? Anything? Because when anybody ever asks me this question, I always falter because your brain starts short firing because there's so many. There's so many things that it almost becomes normal. And by the way, while you're thinking about that, let me point this out as well. In TV news, friends, you're doing so much reporting on sometimes the macabre or the terrible and having to be so emotive and yet still an authority figure that you often, when you're off air, you have a sort of a jaundiced view of the world. And did that affect you?
It does everybody. In fact, it's having gone to work for the sheriff's office and being around them, they suffer from the same thing.
Yeah, right.
And that's why they only usually hang around their crowd.
Because they get it.
And when they're making a joke about something happening, and they're doing it as a defense mechanism for themselves to not let that get to them.
Right.
And whenever they say, they've called in psychologists to work with the people that worked with this officer who got killed, we saw it all the time. And did you ever hear anybody in the news business saying they should bring a psychologist in to talk to us? How are we doing covering death and destruction every single day?
Yeah.
And not once did they ever call anybody in.
No, there wasn't a lot of mental health, which I believe in, good mental health.
I do too.
But we did have to do a lot of negatives, and especially the ones like you who were on that crime beat or that front page beat where you're constantly going from shooting to shooting to shooting. It almost normalizes, and just like being a police officer, that's a hard road.
Well, or you're in Vietnam, and
right.
Every day the body count was there, and you looked around to see who was still there, and the joke was you don't get to know anybody until they've been there 6 months because they probably won't be there 6 months. So Don't even talk to me. Fury is a good example of that with. It's about a tank commander.
Oh, with Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt.
Good movie.
I think one of the best roles he ever played in because he was just very realistic and
good movie.
Really made a good example of all that. But I do think that people in the business, that's why we all hung out together because we had the same kind of sense of humor. And I've done a number of other things, and ain't nobody ever was like being in a newsroom. I've worked for the Orpheum. I worked for ad agencies where they're all wearing three-piece suits, and then they'll say something like, "Dig this." I go, "Dig this."
Listen, I have said this before. When you're a former newsie, I call him a newsie, you're in a fraternity because you've been through stressful moments, whether it's covering a story hours and hours and days on end or sleeping in Studio B because you've got weather coverage or plane crashes. It does bind you together, like being in a battle because you're doing an emotional battle with these horrible stories.
But you still have to get the job done.
You have to, and for the photographers on the boots on the ground, the reporters having to see tragic things, fires and shootings day after day. It's a tough business, and of course I love my city. We know we have a crime problem. I mean, there's a lot of things going on out there, and sometimes we have both seen. I can remember right now. News crews getting attacked.
Oh, since we've left, Channel 13 has had 2 news crews robbed of all their equipment at gunpoint, and then Channel 3, Mike Sirianni, got mugged at a gas station across from Channel 3.
Yeah, you're an open target.
But it used to be like the Red Cross. People did not bother us.
That's right. You used to have sort of a little bubble because we're just wanting to report.
Yeah, we're just showing people what happened.
And I think, again, getting back to my point about an erosion in trust, you've seen a general disdain for reporting. I mean, honestly.
Well, it's because it's rather lackluster, and people see through it when they're trying to make a point. Like, he's just trying to make a point. She's just trying to promote themselves, and they make the story more about them than the story.
That happens a lot, and they're trying to build their tape,
Yeah. I did want to say something about you because I think people should know this. That you grew up, was it Raleigh or Fraser?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
I went to one of the apartment complexes you lived in. They were tearing it down. And you told me that you just had gone back over there to see it one more time.
Yeah.
I drove over there to see it, and I thought, it really is important to know where somebody comes from because of what they went through. And I was really shocked because you always came across to me like you may have gone to MUS and
Raleigh, Egypt.
Had the silk socks and
did not.
Which is the way I grew up in an oil field.
What
in
are
West
socks?
Texas.
What are these socks you speak of? I don't know.
Yeah, I never had those. But then one of your first jobs is you went to Alaska, worked on a tuna boat, and we're not talking like the big tunas they're catching with rods and reels. This was a ship, a factory. And you would get down in the hole and be washing that thing out after all these slimy fish had been sucked out of there.
That's right, yeah.
And how long were you there?
So we worked the entire summer season, which felt like 8 years.
Yeah.
It was a horrible job, but what a life experience. So I got on a Greyhound bus in downtown Memphis. Back then, Greyhound had a deal where you could buy, I don't know if you remember this, they had a special, one-way ticket anywhere in the nation, $79.
Wow. You went to Alaska?
I went to, stopped in Seattle. And it took 3 days to get there from Memphis to Chicago on a bus. It was
but not near as bad as the tuna boat.
No, but it was eye-opening being on a bus for 3 days and changing buses. And we got to Seattle, and then they put us on that giant ship and floated us up to Alaska, and we worked up there all summer. And it was also eye-opening because so many different types of people went to work, and a lot of college kids, a lot of criminals. A lot of people that were on, a lot of people that, right, there was no background check. A lot of people that were on the run from the law, and this is no joke, I would find out later. And we left some there because they got arrested. Some were in an Alaskan prison to this day.
Yeah.
But it was still a great experience for a young man. My mom took me to the Army-Navy store, God rest her soul, and bought me a giant Navy bag. That was her gift for me. I stuffed it full of clothes and went to Alaska. And
had no idea where you were going.
Had no idea what I was doing, and ended up back home 3-4 months later.
But you're right. You were around people that you never would have been around otherwise.
No, made some great friends.
Same thing with me in the oil field. There were guys that were 18 years old. They dropped out of high school, and that was their job, not just in the summer or the holidays. They were there year-round. There's a roughneck working in the oil field, and Dad said, you probably won't go in the Army, at least I hope you don't, because it was Vietnam. But he said, you will meet people like you would meet in the Army because they come from all backgrounds. And you've got to take care of yourself, and you got to be able to, survive your world. You didn't quit. You really couldn't quit where you were.
No.
You were there for the duration, and so many kids today quit if somebody yells at them and says, can you get that door?
Yeah.
He yelled at me.
Yeah, it was a different experience. I'm sure, like you say, being, part of an oil field, oil rig, man, that is about as tough as it gets.
I told my dad, Dad, you could get killed out here. He
Yeah.
said, I told you to be careful.
Yeah. So, but again, I think that's also, Earle, why it's incumbent upon us as parents, grandparents, to pass down and teach so that kids know first of all, they need to know God. They need to know perspective, integrity, truth, hard work, and not just be handed things. I'm in the financial industry now. We're about to go into a time where we're going to see more money change hands than has happened in recorded history because the generation just above us is passing on, and the stock market has been good, and they're going to be passing along
a lot of money.
Trillions of dollars. Well, keep in mind, we already have a culture that has been handed a lot. I mean, we've got kids who are making money playing video games on Twitch.
Oh, they're betting.
Or they're betting. Right. They're gambling on their apps, which is a horrible losing proposition. That concerns me. And I don't want to sound like the old man, get off my yard. But I do feel like we're supposed to stand up and have the courage to have a voice and go, here is some moral authority. Not me. Personally, I believe in the gospel. Here is a moral authority, things to live by. Let's move forward and try to lift up instead of watching things tumble down. I'm kind of going on a rant
not
here.
Saying a word. Somebody did mention this Halloween. They said, the good thing about Halloween? I said, I'm open. What? They said that for a lot of kids is where they learn to say thank you.
Huh.
Every house they go, and my little grandson was handing out the candy. He really had a lot of fun doing that just because he was a big kid, handed the bigger kids candy.
Yeah.
And they'd pick out some candy, and then they'd go, thank you. And if they didn't, their mother would say, what do you say? And you wonder where all these things go that we teach our kids over and over again. It's saying thank you, saying please, saying
You're making
yes,
a
sir,
great
no,
point about Halloween. You're right. You do hear parents, and it's one of the few times you hear them going, be polite.
Yes.
I never thought about that. You're right, though.
It really impressed me because as the night got older, the kids got bigger. And the parents weren't with them, but guess what? They all said thank you.
Yeah.
It was very touching.
No, I agree. I think that's a big deal. All right. I don't want to keep you here all day. Let's talk a little bit more about a couple of topics. I want to ask you a question. What do you think, what is a skill that TV taught you that you have found helpful that you use today, or maybe you can point back and go, I learned that in that industry?
That most people are really good people. Most. In fact, the percentage of bad people is probably less than 5%.
You think they get all the press?
Well, of course, that's all the news talks about.
Yeah.
And people that get up and go to work and pay their bills and pick up their kids at school and, pick and choose what they're going to buy for their kids because they don't have all the money in the world, and they don't complain, and they vote, and they help other people. It happens every day, everywhere, all around you. It's part of life. That's what we do. So when you see these horrible criminals, you go, and I've had people ask me, how do they do something like that? I said, if you could understand that, you would be one of them because they have justified in their own mind. I can shoot somebody because I think they dissed me, and it's my right to be able to defend myself. Not in taking somebody's life, it's not.
Or you have something and I want it.
Yeah, it's like most people are taught if it's not yours, don't even touch it.
Right.
Other people look at if something's laying there and there's nobody else around, that's an opportunity for you to take advantage of.
Yeah, I fear that we have entered a realm, and of course this usually plagues areas that are economically challenged, where the mindset falls to where do I see a weakness that I can exploit?
Yeah.
Right? If it's somebody who's young or weak that I can take something from, or there's a window left unguarded, or I can grab. I feel like we have fallen down that rabbit hole. I mean, you got people on TikTok celebrating those things. Look how I stole this. Look, here's a way to take advantage of the system. I think we've really got to wake up and pray for a revival.
Oh, I think it's happening. I think with Charlie Kirk being killed, I'm very encouraged by the movement back to the Bible.
Bible sales have exploded.
Yes, and they were a huge crowd at Ole Miss just a week or so ago.
Yeah.
I'm very encouraged by that, especially young people saying, I think there's something more than video games and a new bike. I think they're really looking at life as more mature. And then you see, I forget what school it was yesterday, they had rioters out there trying to prevent people from
Berkeley,
going.
California, Berkeley,
yeah.
UCB.
And, I'm not much for lawlessness. And if somebody hit me or threw something at me, I'm afraid I would probably be arrested because it just steams me seeing that.
To your point, we've got to get back to where we can have calm discourse. No matter what you believe.
And that's what he was doing.
Right. I agree.
Exactly what he was doing.
I agree. I never saw him, and again, I knew nothing about him before he passed, but I never saw anything, and there was so much video that came out. I never saw him try to incite. Everything he used was based on biblical principles. And listen, there's always going to be hatred out there. No matter what side you're on, there's always going to be activism and hatred that manipulates. And that's what I see now, a lot of manipulation. Yeah. I dealt with that when I left TV news, some media manipulation. I know you've had to deal with it. Right now, I've never seen it like this, where activism, no matter what side, has become so skilled at working the social media system And listen, you and I have said this before. Nobody has ever won an argument on Facebook.
No.
Never. People still go there and explode in anger. It never does any good.
No.
It doesn't. Nobody ever gets convinced.
You're not going to be changed, and they're not going to be changed.
No, it's better to walk away.
Yeah, I just don't comment.
I have learned. Eli Manning said this a long time ago when he was with the Giants. He wasn't doing great pre-Super Bowl. And somebody said, how do you feel about all this negative press? Because he's in New York. And it was just, he goes, what negative press? I don't read it. And I was like, and I remember going, what? He just didn't read it. And I have learned with social media in particular, if you log off or get rid of your account or do whatever, it goes away. You don't have to stick your head into that blender.
Because they get no response. If they don't get a response,
they move on.
They move on and find somebody that they can poke the bear will growl.
Right.
And that's what they're looking for.
Let's do this. I'm going to ask you two questions.
All right.
First one's going to be what you love about Memphis. Then I want you to tell me advice to young communicators. So let's start with this city that we love. We've been here forever. Great people everywhere, like you said. A lot of good people. Tell me something you love about Memphis or the Mid-South.
I saw it when I first moved here from Dallas. Dallas is a great city, but very pretentious. Everybody wants to know what you do, and is there anything you can do for me?
Right.
And if they say, I used to tell people I was a TV repairman, and they go, oh,
good day, sir. Good day.
Moved to Memphis, and they didn't care who you are, how much money you have. Do they like you? And I found that if you have a sense of humor, you can make it in Memphis. Everybody loves somebody that's fun to be around and has a quick response. It's like when I went to work at Fox, and Ernie Freeman has got such a dry, sarcastic wit, and I would fire back on him immediately. He'd go, hey, you're pretty quick.
I will only say this because I know he doesn't watch. He is funny. If I thought Ernie watched this, I would not say it. Ernie, one of my favorite people, very funny.
He is very, very, and it's all understated, which is what I love about it.
Very dry.
You don't have, if you have to explain your humor, it ain't funny to the person you're explaining to.
Right.
Either you get it or you don't get it. But I always gave people enough credit to say, I'm going to say this, and I think you'll know what I'm saying. But I wouldn't even say that. I would just say it, and I would end it. And they'd go, I love it that you give us credit for being smart.
For knowing what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so people in Memphis, everybody from Fred Smith, who I got to spend some time with, to Jack Sammons, who was a relative of Fred's. Everybody. Nick Vergas, one of my best friends in the world. Ron Olson, who I worked with. There are all these people that the only reason they're popular is because they're real. And people in Memphis will not tolerate a fake person. No. They just will not tolerate.
Let me tell you what, if you're from Memphis or the Mid-South, you can sniff out inauthentic. It's a smell test, and people know. They know. And that's one of the things I love about Memphians in the Mid-South.
But you go to Nashville, it's not there.
It's not the same.
And you come back to Memphis, and everybody goes, and I talk to all these people that come in the Peabody now, because we've been there almost a year. And I said, how do you like Memphis? Oh, we love Memphis. Memphis is not like any other.
It's not like anything I thought.
Yes.
It's not like what people said.
And I said, well, do you hear all about the crime? I said, we got crime in Dallas. We got crime in Fort Worth. We got crime in Kansas City. But you come to Memphis, the food's incredible. Everybody is so hospitable. And we're smart. We're street smart. We're not to go hang out at Beale Street at 2 in the morning. You don't hang out in New Orleans in the French Quarter.
You don't want to go downtown in Brooklyn. You don't want to 2 in the morning.
So
I get it.
You're smart, and then you go places where people recommend, because the local people will tell you where you can go, when you can go. And they said, we just love Memphis. And that's the way I feel about Memphis. It's like the people I ran into at Fresh Market.
Yeah.
They have no qualms at all about saying, hey, we know you.
Yeah.
But I talk back to them. I go over and sit down, and we had a long conversation.
Well, that's what they love.
Yes.
And that's what they know. Okay.
You're approachable.
So let's close with, if you've got I'm going to call it a young communicator, because honestly, today's young person has a million different ways that they can work. They don't have to go try to get a TV job. They can start their own podcast. They can go on whatever. What would you say to them?
Go and start your own podcast. You don't even have to have all the equipment you have or I have. You can do it with one cell phone and put it on a little cheap little tripod and bring your pal in, and you can both sit there and talk on one cell phone. And then as you grow, you could buy more and more equipment. The key to it is finding something you're passionate about, that you understand, that you can teach other people about, especially young people. Show people how to do something. And be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. I remember when I first started the business, I tried to be Walter Cronkite. Today, people died. And my newsreader goes, Earle, you sound like Walter Cronkite. I went, thank you.
Thank you.
He said, we've already got Walter. We need you. And that was the hardest thing in the world, is just to be yourself. But once you are, it's so easy to do because we're not actors.
Yeah.
You know, we're just us. But no matter what you do, you should just be yourself and don't sit around and talk about it. Go get a cell phone and start going to YouTube and looking at other podcasts and see what appeals to you, the kind of way you want to do it, where you want to do it, and just start doing it.
I would mirror that almost completely, Earle, and say if I was going to tell, and we get asked all the time, young kids want some advice or whatever, I was going to say it, but you did it. Be authentic.
Yeah.
If you want to start taping, interviewing, whatever, look at your personality, find out what you're good at or what you know about or something you want to learn about. Talk about those things. Don't try to be something you're not. That's when it doesn't work.
Well, it's like I used to tell people about an interview. I said, don't use words that you're not accustomed to using.
Right. Don't try to talk big.
Yeah, they try to use, go to their word book and come up with something. Just use the words you use all the time. That's how you express yourself. And just talk to me.
And don't be afraid to fail.
No.
We're almost going to wrap this up, but I remember a teaching moment for me was when I first started in weather, I was terrified of making a mistake. Terrified. Everything was don't mess up. And one time I dropped the clicker. And I thought at that point in my early career, I thought this is career ending. I dropped the clicker. And so what did I do? Bent down and picked it up and kept going and realized nobody cared.
No.
And when that clicked in my head, I had made a mountain out of a molehill, and this is a non-issue. And by just picking it up and going and laughing about it,
it wasn't a big deal.
It was a real moment. Hey, this guy drops things too. And I put that behind me and used that going forward.
Well, my first weathercast, I had a pointer. This is back during the magnet clouds and the fronts were all magnets. And they had the big national board that you'd slide that back, and there would be Texas.
Did you have an actual pointer?
I did, and it was wooden. It had been broken. It had been masking tape back together, and I'm shaking so bad. You know you do a pencil when you're holding a pencil?
It looks like a rubber.
It looks like rubber. That's what it looked like. I'm sweating profusely, and I'd come off the floor because the weather guy had a wreck on the way back in. And all the guys I worked on the floor with running cameras, the cameras are shaking because they're laughing so hard. You're dying. I know. And but I got through it.
Yeah.
And I did the forecast, and I did, got through the whole thing. And I said, and that's your weather. And I walked off and said, I will never do that again.
And look at you now.
The next day, I came in, the news director said, you did a great job.
Look at you.
I said, you're kidding. He said, no, you finished.
Yeah.
He said, young people run off crying. I said, I didn't have the strength to do that.
I was gelatinous. All right. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to say?
Just that this is a wonderful community, and that's why I moved my show downtown to the Peabody and to Lansky's, because that's all I talk about is what's great about Memphis. I have interesting people. We talk about food, fashion, what's going on around town, and then we're getting ready to open another studio at Southern Security's new building on Bahia in Collierville. And we're going to concentrate more on business and entrepreneurship there. So we'll still do downtown, come out to
spotlight businesses,
but also I want to start bringing on all the people who are part of the Entrepreneur Society of Memphis. All these people that go way, Bass Fred and Abe Plow. This is a very entrepreneur. It's
fertile. It's very fertile.
And people invent stuff here all the time. It's the first time things have ever been done have taken place in Memphis. And those stories should be told because we are our history. And I think if we start presenting more people who have done incredible things, they will become the role models for what's great about Memphis and inspire other people.
Yeah, I love that. All right, friends, this has been fun. I could talk with Earle for hours, but we don't want you to have to sit here with us for me to do that. Thank you to my friend Earle Farrell. Thank you to Lexus of Memphis again for making this whole show possible. By the way, Earle Farrell for Memphis. He's got a great show. In fact, go back and find the interview at Graceland recently. Jack Soden, one of the few times Jack has done an interview. Yeah. You need to check that out.
And at the guest house.
You did it at the guest house at Graceland. So that's
in fact, Hal Lansky said, how did you get in there?
Yeah.
I said, I asked Jack.
Force of nature.
And he goes, nobody gets in there to do an interview.
No, it was a big deal, and so that's a fun one to watch. You want to check that out. And friends, if you've got a question for me, email it. You can email an idea for a show or a comment, or just say hi. You can reach us at the Current Temp, the name of the show, at gmail.com. And of course, we'd love for you to subscribe on YouTube. Or you can watch it on my Facebook page, Joey Sulipeck, and you can also listen on Spotify. Earle, thank you for being here.
And by the way, you're coming on my show next.
We're doing that.
Yeah.
You're going to catch
Put
me.
you in a Lansky jacket.
I cannot wait. Get a big TCB. All right, friends, y'all have a great week.
Have a great one.